everyone, I'm Daria. Today I'm going to teach you how to knit classic socks. Welcome back to Daria Crochet Life. On this channel I post knitting and crochet lessons, simple and not so simple tutorials on how to make different knitting and crochet projects. So if any of that interests you, please subscribe to my channel. Okay, let's talk about all the materials and tools that you will need for today's tutorial. So first of all, you will need a yarn. For the adult size sock, you will need around 100-gram sock yarn. I'm gonna use this yarn. Unfortunately, the label just fell off the ball, but believe me, this is the same label. It's from the company Sans Garn, and the yarn's called Sisu Superwash. It's really good yarn. It's 80% wool and 20% nylon. Very good sock content. Every ball has 50 gram, and in 50 gram it is 175 meters, which is a little bit thicker than regular sock yarn, but that's okay. They recommend us to use 2.5 or 3 millimeter needles. I'm gonna use a little bit smaller needles because I like my socks to be a little bit tighter. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, and if you're interested, this is the color named 2153 that I'm gonna use. One ball is 50 gram, and for adult size socks I will make socks for myself, and I'm wearing Euro 40 or Canadian 9.5 or 10 size, women's size. So 2 balls would be enough. I made one sock already, and you see this is the leftover from another ball, so you definitely need 2 balls of this yarn for a pair of socks. Now let's talk about needles. So I really like to work with double pointed needles, with 5 double pointed needles, and these needles from Knit Pro, one of my favorite, one of my newest discovery, and I really love to work with them. So this is US 0 or 2 millimeter needles. I just love them. I love this. I like to work with them. Let me explain you what. Let me tell you one story. So before I was working with the same size needles, 2 millimeter needles, but that was wooden needles. I even don't remember where did I get them from. I had them for forever, and I was making all of my socks on those needles, the same size. But then I decided to try these guys. I bought them and I started making a sock, and I realized that my tension is so much tighter than it used to be before when I was working with wooden needles. So be careful with your tools, be careful with the needles. Make sure that if you started working on one type of needles and then you continue doing the same project on the same needles, and try these kind of needles. Maybe you will like them, because I like my socks to be more tighter, less loose. So that's why you see this yarn, they recommend to work with 2.5 or 3 millimeter needles, but no, we will go with 2 millimeter needles. You will need to experiment, and that's up to you what kind of needles to work with. So first you will need to make a little swatch to see if you like the tension. Okay, also you will need scissors, you will need measuring tape to make a swatch to measure your food, you will need tapestry needle or yarn needle later for making a Kitchener stitch and weaving in ends. And I know that a lot of people, they don't like working with double pointed needles, and that's acceptable. You definitely can do socks on circular needles. If you have 2 millimeter circular needles or 2.5, you don't need to buy these needles. But in that case, you will need to use stitch markers. I will not need stitch markers because I'm using 4 needles. I will work with actually 5 needles. But if you work with circular needles, you will need stitch markers. Okay, that's it about materials and tools. Let's start our tutorial. This is the sock that I already made. I didn't wash it yet, so that's why it's looking a little bit weird. But I just want to show you all the parts that we'll have in this tutorial. So first we will start working with the ribbon, with the cuff. Then we'll have some amount of rows that will work just in stockinette stitch. Then we will start making the heel. We will make this, it's like reinforced heel, that's how I called it. So we will do a special pattern for making heel a little bit more reinforced. Then we'll do the heel flap, I think that's how we call it. Anyway, and then we will pick up stitches over here and we'll start doing the decreases, so it will all sit naturally and anatomically on the foot. And then we'll work some amount of rows the length of the foot, and we'll end with this with decreases here, and we will do Kitchener stitch. So this part is for the toes. All right, but the question number one is how many stitches to cast on. Because all yarns are different, I really recommend you to make a swatch and try it, like wash it, dry it, and then measure it. Measure your ankle. That depends, one more time, that depends how tall you want your sock to be. So measure your ankle. You need to measure it over here, right before heel. This measurement and that measurement are the same, so that's why over here and there we will have the same amount of stitches. So, and when you, let's say you will have, I don't know, 20 centimeters, for example, I don't know, is it a real number or not, is it a real measurement? Then you'll find out your gauge, how many stitches in 1 centimeter you have. Then you take that number and multiply by 20, and you will know the total number that you need for your sock. I already did all my calculations, and I know that I need to cast on 68 stitches at the beginning. And you need to be very careful, because the first pattern that we're gonna make is 2x2 ribbon, so the total number of stitches that we're gonna cast on should divide into 4. So in my case, 68 is easily divided by 4. If, for example, you need some amount of stitches that is not divided by 4, so you need to bring it to the closest number of stitches that is divided by 4. And then finally we can start working. Okay, I'm going to cast on 68 stitches right now. If you'll use circular needles, you just hold them, 2 of them together, and you'll cast on the total amount of stitches on that needle. In my case, with double pointed needles, I also take two needles like that. I'm gonna leave a long end, because we're gonna use long and cast on, long tail cast on method, and I'm making the slip knot, inserting these 2 needles into the knot and adjusting the size. So then make sure that the short end is on your thumb and long end working yarn is on the index, and start casting on. So 68, if I divide it by 4, that would be 17. That means on every needle I will have 17 stitches. Yeah, I will work with 4 needles, and the 5th one would be my working needle. Okay, so now I'm casting on 17 stitches on the first needle. I have 17 stitches. Now I'm taking another 2 needles. So these stitches I can move to the middle of my needles. Hold all needles like this and keep casting on. I know this is not the easiest cast on, but it's not very hard. It's not very complicated. So I also need to have 17 stitches on the second needle. Have 17 stitches on the second needle. Move the stitches a little bit closer to the middle, so I will not lose my stitches. Then I have just 1 needle left from my set, and I will very carefully take away one needle from my first pair of needles very carefully. Put these two together. Now hold everything like that. So you see I'm holding all 5 needles right now, and I need to cast on another 17 needles on the 17 stitches, sorry, on the 3rd needle. Have 17 stitches on the 3rd needle. Let's move stitches a little bit closer to the middle of the needles, and now I need to take away 1 needle from the 2nd part and 1 needle from the last part. Be careful, try not to drop the stitches. Put them all in one line like this. Move this a little bit closer. And it's time to cast on the last 17 stitches on the last needle. All right, I have 17 stitches on the last needle. Right now, I'm gonna put everything on the table, and I like to make a knot with the short end and my working yarn. I don't know why I'm doing that. My grandma used to do it all the time, and that's what she told me to do, so that's why I'm kind of doing it. Then be careful, move the stitches, the last set of stitches to the middle of the needles, and take away 1 needle. Then you need to put everything in round. One more time, be very careful, like that. So, and we will have 4 needles with stitches, and stitches are evenly divided into all of these 4 needles. Okay, this short end will show us the beginning of the round. So now we have 1st needle, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And starting from the row 1, we will start doing our pattern. So, and the pattern is 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches. So I insert my needle knitwise, and I'm doing my first knit stitch. And I like to work, when I do socks, as tight as possible. To knit. Second one is knit as well, and then I'm bringing the working yarn to the front, and I'm gonna purl next 2 stitches. Purl and purl the 4th one. Okay, so that's it. That's our repeat. 2 knit, 2 purl stitches. Work like this all around. I'm at the end of my first needle right now. I have 1 stitch left. I just want to tell you that please be careful at the end of the needle. You see, I finished 1 needle, moving my stitches to the middle. So stitches should always be in the middle of the needles. Now I have this free needle, and I'm going to work with the 2nd needle right now. So over here you should be very careful. Next is a knit stitch, so try to make it as tight as possible, because if you work this first stitch loose, then you will have a visible gap, like a ladder on your final work. Like you will see that would be very visible, and you don't want that. Okay, so be careful when you come from one needle to another. If you work with circular needles, that's when you do your magic loop. And you work like this to the end of this round. To be honest, then it's very, very easy. Next part is very easy. You need to work for 35 rounds. In my case, you can have as many rounds as you want of ribbing. So I recommend you to keep track of your rounds and count your stitches once in a while. So make sure that you still have the correct number of stitches. So work like this for 35 rounds. I finished 35 rounds of the ribbing, and this is how my sock looks like right now. After that, you can decide and make the ribbon bigger or smaller. It's all up to you, but be careful and write down exactly how many rounds you do each part for the second sock. So the next part is very easy, and one of my favorite is a stockinette stitch. So I am going to knit all of my stitches. I keep working in rounds, and I'm knitting all of my stitches. And for this particular sock, I decided to go with also 35 rounds. So please be careful and keep track of how many rounds you did. So the second sock would be exactly the same. So work like this for 35 more rounds. You see, I'm just knitting all of my stitches. Okay, so I finished my 35 rows. So I have 35 rows of the ribbon, 35 rows of the stockinette stitch, and the next part is a heel. So we will start working on the heel. The first rule that you need to remember about the heel is that we will work only with half of our stitches. So if you also work with double pointed needles, it's very easy because I have exactly the same number of stitches on each needle, and it's easy for me. I don't need to do anything with these two needles, and I will work only with first and second needle. But if you work with circular needles, you just need to put half of your stitches, the second half of the round, you need to put it on the waste yarn or some stitch holder or another pair of needles, so whatever works for you. And also you will work with only half of your stitches. In my case, since I have 68 stitches around, that means for the heel I have 34 stitches. So 17 and 17 stitches from the first and second needle. And I can start working right now. The first part is very easy. It is just a 2-row repeat, and we will do reinforced heel. So this pattern is a little bit different than the regular stockinette stitch. So the first stitch you slip, and when you slip it the same way like it is sitting on the needle. So in my case it's purlwise. You see, when I slip the stitch, the right leg of the stitch is in front and left is at the back, and working yarn is behind the work, so the working yarn is at the back. You start your row with slipping one stitch, working yarn at the back. Next stitch you knit, then you slip again the same way, working yarn is at the back, knit next one, and that's it. You work like that to the end of my half stitches, in my case 34 stitches. So one stitch I slip, another one I knit, one stitch I slip, another one I knit. So I finished my first needle. Now I can take this aside, I don't need that. And I will work this stitches from the second needle to my working needle, and then I'll have just like all my stitches will be on 3 needles. Okay, the next stitch is knit, next one is slip. So I will work like that to the end of this needle, and at the end I'm slipping the second last stitch and knitting the last stitch. All right, so that was first row of the heel. Then I need to turn my work, and right now I will start looking to the inside of my sock. And this row is very easy. I'm gonna just purl everything, but you need to slip the first stitch. So you see the working yarn, you can even don't touch it, like leave it as is, and slip the first stitch, and then we are gonna purl. So it doesn't matter if you're continental or English knitter, you can start purling right after that. This will create really nice edge, very easy for picking up stitches later, because we will use this edge for picking up stitches after that. So you purl all stitches, the one that you slipped, the one that you knitted in the previous row, you purl all of them to the end. I finished my purl row. Now I turn my work again, so I mark somewhere else that I have 2 rows right now. next row, we're going to repeat the same row that we did before. We will start with slip in the first stitch, but be careful over here, because the first stitch we will slip knitwise this time. So we are slipping knitwise, working yarn is at the back. Next you will knit, and then we can start slipping the same way like we were doing before, purlwise, working yarn is at the back. And keep working like that, one knit, one slip, one knit, one slip. So work like that to the end of this row. And that would be row number 3. In total, you need to make, I'm going to make 40 rows like that. But I can tell you, so that depending on the size, this part should be between 2.5 inches to 3 inches. Mine is a little bit bigger than 2.5 inches. That's for the for my size. Euro 40 or Canadian 9.5 is working very well. Okay, you see, I almost finished my 3rd row. Please keep track of which row you are right now. I want to show you one more time how I'm slipping the first stitch on the next row. So I'm turning my work, and this time I'm slipping my first stitch purlwise. And then, if let's pretend that you are English knitters, so you will hold your working yarn with your right hand, and then you can start purling like normal. And you work like that to the end. Okay, so work these 2 rows for 40 rows in total, if you want to copy exactly my pattern, or for 2.5 to 3 inches, depending on the size. And you need to finish with this purl row. The next part that we will work on is called turning the heel. So we will work still on this heel stitches. I have 34 stitches, and I need to divide them into 3 parts. And these 2 side parts should have exactly the same number of stitches, and the middle part can have different number of stitches. And the middle part should be smaller than 2 of these parts. So I decided to have 12 stitches on each of my side parts and 10 stitches on my middle part. Right now, if you want, you can attach a stitch marker. I told you that it's going to be 12 stitches on one side. Let me count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so this is the spot where I need to mark my 3rd part. I don't need to mark this one, and we are ready to work. So right now we will still work flat. We will turn our work. And right now the pattern is just stockinette stitch, easy knit on one side, purl on the other side. So right now I'm going to knit to 1 stitch to the marker. First stitch I'm slipping the same way like I was doing before, and then knit all my stitches. I don't really need to count them, and I will stop when I'll have 1 stitch before the marker. All right now I have 1 stitch before the marker. I don't need marker anymore, so I can take it away. And next 2 stitches I need to work as 2 together, but I'm not gonna knit them as 2 together. I will do SSK. So I'm slipping the next stitch knitwise, knitting the next stitch, and insert my left needle into the slipped stitch like that and pull it through. So that was my decrease. And then I need to add 1 more stitch from the 3rd part. So I did a decrease and plus 1 more stitch. Turn my work. I need to take my stitch marker again, and remember that I had 12 stitches on my side parts, so I'm counting 12 stitches from this side. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12, and I'm installing the marker to separate these 12 stitches on the side. And after that, so first of all, first stitch we are slipping, and I'm slipping it purlwise. Then I'm purling to 1 stitch before the marker. I don't need to count my stitches. I don't care how many stitches I'm working on. I just remember that I need to purl to 1 stitch before the marker. I have 1 stitch before the marker. I can take away the marker. Next 2 stitches I will purl 2 together, work together as purl 2 together. That's easy. And then I'll add 1 more stitch, so I'll purl 1 more stitch and turn my work. All right, so from now on I don't need to count my stitches. I don't need to install markers. Now it's easy. When you on the right side, you do the same thing all the time. So you slip the first stitch as if to knit. You knit to 1 stitch before the gap. It's going to be a gap here, this one, and you need to work 1 stitch before the gap. So you will see that, you will feel that. That's very easy. This stitch is easy to work. And then, this is a gap, and I stop when I have 1 stitch. Now I work my SSK, slip, knit, and pull through, and add 1 more stitch. Turn work. Now I'll show you all what you're supposed to do on the wrong side. Here you slip the first stitch purlwise, and you purl to 1 stitch before the gap. We will have the same kind of gap on the purl side as well, and you need to stop 1 stitch before the gap. Okay, this is my spot. I have a gap, and this is my 1 stitch before the gap. Next 2 stitches I work as purl 2 together. Okay, and then I purl 1 more and turn in my work. So, and then I repeat the same thing that I was showing you what you need to do on the right side. And as you can see, you will have less and less stitches on these 2 side parts, and you need to eliminate them all. You need to stop when there would be 0 stitches on the side parts. I finished turning the heel, so it looks like that. And as you can see, the heel is turned right now. So right now we stop working flat. We will work in rounds from now on, and we will move the beginning of the row. So right now I need to count how many stitches I have. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 22. So, and I need to find the middle, so 11 stitches from where I'm right now. That would be the middle of the heel, and that's my new beginning of the row. So I'm taking the needle, slipping the first stitch knitwise, and I'm knitting 11 stitches, including that slipped stitch. Okay, so now this spot is my new beginning of the row, beginning of the round, to be honest. And I take another needle because I have 5 needles in total, so this 2 and that 2. From now on I will work with 5 needles again. So first thing, I need to work all of these 11 stitches. Then I need to pick up stitches along this side, and in my case I will pick up 22 stitches. I know that because I already did my first sock, and I'm gonna use this needle that I already have, and it's very easy to do. So because we were slipping the first stitch, here on the edge we have a chain, we have very nice like V. It's very easy to see. So I'm going to skip the very first loop, and I will insert my needle through the second one, and I will knit that. And I can start doing that from the very first stitch. So this is my first loop that I'm skipping. Oh no, this stitch is already worked. I'm going into the next one. So the first loop, the very first one, I'm skipping. I insert my needle through the second one and knit that stitch. If you work, if you knit with English knitting, so you can do it exactly the same way. And then I find the next stitch, second loop, and knit that stitch. So I need to work like that to this point, and I need to pick up all the stitches. I picked almost all stitches, all my V's, and here if I start working with the next stitch that I already have, I will have a little gap over here. I will have a hole that I don't want, so that's why I'm going to pick up 2 more stitches, and also I'm doing the same thing. I will not pick the first loop through the second one stitch, and through the second one another stitch, and in total, if I count, I will have 11 stitches that I had from the turning the heel plus 22. I need to remember this number for the second side. So if you're working with circular needles, on this point you need to place a marker. I'm not going to place a marker. I will just keep working with another needle, and that would be my marker. But if you're working with the circular needles, that's where you put a marker. Here I have my front stitches, and I just work them as normal. So I will just knit 2 of the stitches. It's very easy. I worked my 2 of my front needles. If you're working with circular needles, that's another place where you put a stitch marker. So basically you need to mark your front stitches. It's exactly half of all of your beginning stitches. In my case, that's 34 stitches. Right now I need to pick up exactly the same way like I was doing before. I need to pick up 22 stitches along this side, and I will do exactly the same thing. So here on the gap, let me find the first stitch. It's this one, but if I'll pick that, I'll have a little gap, and I need to pick 2 more stitches. So that's why I'm going and pick up it through here, and then another one like that, and then like normal the second loop, picking up 22 stitches, like basically work to this needle. When you come to the next needle, 11 stitches, so we need to finish our round, and I'm going to knit all of the stitches from one needle to another. And then I will have, let me stick it like that, and then I will have 4 needles in my work. And if you work with circular needles, you will have just 2 needles, but don't forget to put 2 stitch markers. And maybe over here, if you work with circular needles, you need to place beginning of the row marker. That should be a different marker. Okay, so that's what you're supposed to have by this time. 2 needles with our beginning number of stitches, because we didn't do anything on these needles. That's our front needles, and 2 needles with more stitches than it was before. Originally I had 17 stitches on one needle. Right now on each of these heel or back needles I have 33 stitches. So right now my goal is to decrease. But I cannot decrease right away. We will do very nice decrease. So we will work 1 decrease row, the one that I will show you next, and after that 1 non-decrease row, and we will work like that until we will have our beginning number of stitches at both of these back needles. And if you work with circular needles, when you reach the beginning, the total number of stitches that you had at the beginning. In my case, that's 68 stitches. Okay, let's do the decrease row. So first thing that we need to do, we start knitting, and we will stop 3 stitches before the end of the first needle, or if you have stitch markers, so 3 stitches before the marker, that's when you stop. All right, so I have 3 stitches left, and next 2 I work as knit 2 together. Okay, it's gonna be very hard to do, but you can do it. We can do it. Yep. All right, so knit 2 together, and then knit next stitch. If you have marker here, so then you slip the marker and knit all the stitches from the front. So I'm knitting next 2 stitches without any decreases. The number of stitches on these needles stay the same. Or if you work with markers, so you just knit to next marker. I worked all of my stitches from these 2 needles. If you have markers, so now you need to slip the marker. And I came to the last needle, and it's very easy how to do decrease here. So you start with knitting 1. Okay, and then you need to make SSK. So I slip next, knit following, and slip like that. And then I knit to the end to my beginning of the row. So as you can see, I decreased 2 stitches in like a round. After that, I'm making 1 round without any changes, so I will just knit all around. And then I need to work like that. 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease, 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease, until I will have my beginning number of stitches. That's very easy. So I had 68 stitches, and I will stop doing these decreases when I'll have 68, and I will work 1 row without decreases. So my last row should be without decreases. Okay, so I have my beginning number of stitches on 4 of my needles right now, and all around I have my beginning number of stitches. And the last row that I did was the row without any decreases. That's what I have for now. You see I have like a decrease line. That's what you're supposed to have, and it's the same on both sides. After that is one of my favorite parts in making socks. You just work without any changes. You just knit, 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 and knit around. And you need to work like that until usually I try it on myself, and let's pretend this is the foot. So when the sock is like covered completely, the pinky finger on the foot, so then you need to stop to make the decreases for toes. In my case, I need to make 39 more rows. So in total, usually I just knit around, and then when I forget how many rows I did, I start counting. Like, it's very, very visible. I found my last decrease, which was this one, And then right now I have 1 row after that, and in total I need to stop when I'll have 40 rows, and I'll see you there in the last part. So right now it's very easy part. If you work with circular needles, you don't need these markers for now. I mean, you can leave them because later we will use them, but if you don't want, you can eliminate them, and you can put them later. So right now keep working in rounds, have the same number of stitches, don't decrease anymore, and stop after the sock will cover the pinky finger on your foot. Okay, I finished the length of my sock, so I made 40 rounds from, if I count from the last decrease, it's easy to see, and then I start counting from the next row, and if I'll count, I'll have 40 rows, so be careful with that. And now I'm ready to start my toe decreases. Right now on every needle I have 17 stitches, and I need to decrease to just 4 stitches on every needle. So in total I'll have 16 stitches all around, and I will do it in 2 parts. So the first part will be very easy. So first I'll do 1 row of decrease. I'm gonna show you soon how to make a decrease row, and then I will do another row, no decrease. So it will be just 2 row repeat, decrease, no decrease, and I will repeat these 2 rows just 5 times. So in total that would be 10 rows. 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease, 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease. So in total I will eliminate 5 stitches, because 5 times 5 stitches. Then next 8 rounds I will decrease in every round, decrease, 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 and then I will have just 4 stitches on each of my needles. So if you have different number of stitches, what should you do? You also need to think of, okay, how many stitches you have on one needle right now? That's question number 1. And how many stitches you want at the end. So I would recommend you to have minimum 4 stitches on every needle. So minimum in total you need to have 16 stitches, but 20 or 24 would be good as well, but no more than that. And one more time, that depends on the yarn weight that you're working with. But if you work with just regular classic sock yarn, so I would say you need 4, 5 or maximum 6 stitches on one needle at the end, because at the very end, when we'll finish decreasing, we will do a Kitchener stitch. So we will sew together our stitches, and it will be like little seam, invisible though. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what size you're doing. So obviously the smaller size you do, the less stitches you need to have. But if you're doing your socks for adults, so 4, 5 or maximum 6 stitches at the end, that's what I would recommend you to have on one needle. And let's say you decided to leave to have 4 stitches like me, then you, like, let's say I have 13 stitches right now, and 8 of these stitches, which is a little bit like we cannot divide it by 2, but it is like almost half, more than half. Yeah, that's a little bit more than half. You leave it for the part number 2 when you decrease in every row, and all rest 5 stitches you will eliminate by making 1 decrease row, 1 non-decrease row. So if that sounds complicated, please leave me a comment in comment section, and I will be very happy to help you with these calculations. Anyway, so let me show you how to make a decrease row. If I say decrease row, so you will do it exactly the same way. If you're working with circular needles, so right now you need to do this thing. So you need to put 2 stitch markers here and there. So that's the side of our sock. So remember, when we had like half of the stitches we will leave in for the heel, and then we have half of the stitches for the front. So you need to divide your stitches in half, exactly in half, and put your stitch marker here and there, because we will do our decreases on this just over here on the sides. And right now we start with first needle. First and third needle we do the same thing. Second and fourth needle you do the same things. Okay, so first and third needle you need to last 3 stitches. So when you'll have just 3 stitches before the marker, or like at the end, or just 3 stitches left on this needle. Okay, let me move this one a little bit. You need to do knit 2 together. So next 2 stitches you knit 2 together. And then knit 1. So if you have marker, you slip marker after that. And that's what you will do with the first and third needle. So you need to last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, knit 1. The second and fourth needles you work like this. You knit 1, and then you need to do SSK. So slip 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch, and pull through. And then you knit to the end of this needle. At the beginning of the second and fourth needle, you knit 1 stitch and then you do SSK. Now we are moving to the third needle, so we will knit to last 3 stitches, then we'll do our decrease, and then on the next needle we will start with decrease. If you will work with stitch markers, so you need to remember that before first you knit 3 stitches to the marker, then you knit 2 together, knit 1, slip marker, knit 1, SSK, knit to next 3 stitches to next marker. That's it. It's very, very easy. And that's what you're supposed to do on a decrease row. And the beginning of the row is still remains in the same place. So like here on the heel, so that is your beginning of the row. It's still over there. I'm finishing my first decrease row. I eliminated 4 stitches, and as I said, after that I need to make 1 row without any decreases. So I will just work without any decreases all around, and that would be my first repeat. In total I'm gonna do 5 repeats like that. So, and I will eliminate 5 stitches. Right now I had 17 stitches. Now I should have 16 stitches on each of my needles, and I will stop when I will have 12 stitches on each of my needles. I will work like this: 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease, 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease, and I'll see you after that. I finished 10 of my rows, so 1 row decrease, 1 row no decrease. Right now I have 12 stitches on each of my needles. So I finished part 1, which took me 10 rows. After that, next 8 rows, part 2, which is a little bit like less amount of rows that the first part, I'm going to decrease in every row. So that's easy. Right now I don't even need to count. I will decrease, 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 and I will stop when I'll have just 4 stitches on each of my needle. Alright, so I decreased, and right now I have 4 stitches on each of my needles, and that's it with knitting. Right now I will do a Kitchener stitch, but before doing that I need to prepare my my stitches. So first of all, I'm going to move this front stitches just to 1 needle. If you'll work on circular needles, you don't need to do anything. You'll just need to take away your markers over here, and that's it, and you will have magic loops over there. Okay, and after that I need to work this first needle, so 4 stitches from the first needle, because I need to move my working yarn. That's okay if these 4 stitches would be worked. Okay, and I will leave in my work on just 2 needles like this. After that, we need to cut the working yarn. So the rule says leave the length of the yarn end should be 3 times longer than the seam. So the seam is over here, and I'm gonna cut, I don't know, let's say over there, so it will be easy for me to manipulate. Then I'm taking my tapestry needle, threading the yarn end through the tapestry needle, and I'm ready to sew. So I have a separate video on how to do Kitchener stitch. I'm gonna leave you a link in the description box. So if you don't know how to do that, please check that video. I explained very well how to do the Kitchener stitch. But if you're familiar, so you can follow my steps over here. It's very easy. First of all, we need to do a setup. So first you will use we'll have front needle and we'll have a back needle. The first stitch on the front needle, you insert your tapestry needle purlwise, and you leave your stitch on the needle and you pull through. Then the first stitch on the back needle, you insert your tapestry needle knitwise and you leave the stitch on the needle. Okay, so that was a setup. After that, we can start our repeat. First stitch on the front, you insert your tapestry needle knitwise and you take it off, and then I insert it on the second needle purlwise and I pull my yarn through and I leave it on. Then I'm going to the back needle, purlwise, first stitch, take it off, second stitch, knitwise, leave it on and pull through. And that's it. After that, I just repeat to the end. So first stitch, knitwise, take it off, second stitch, purlwise, leave on and pull through. Back needle, first stitch, purlwise, take it off, knitwise, second stitch, leave it on and pull through. And don't forget to tighten your working yarn, otherwise it would be too loose over here. When I have last 2 stitches, the front needle I am taking off knitwise, and this back stitch I'm taking off purlwise and pull through. After that, I can go inside. Yeah, check that you like the seam. So if the seam is not tight enough, you can tighten that by pulling it a little bit like this, one by one. Yeah, let's start from the beginning. Sometimes you don't work very tight, and then you can pull one by one like this to tighten the seam. Okay, so when you like the seam, then you can bring the working yarn to the wrong side like this, and then we can weave in the end. So I'm flipping over my sock and weaving in from the wrong side. But first I need to make a security knot, so find any loop that is close to the working yarn. Let's say this one. Insert your needle under that loop, pull through, but not to the end, leave a bigger loop, and then insert your needle into that loop and tighten it gently like that. And then you can weave it in. Find any loop that is close to the working yarn, insert your needle under that loop and pull through. Then the next one and pull through the closest and weave in like that a little bit more, and then you can cut the excess yarn. Okay, I think that's enough. Now I'm taking scissors and cutting the excess yarn, leaving a small end. That's okay that this small end will be inside of the sock, so no worries. And then I need to do the same thing with the other end, and then my sock would be ready. Okay, and this is the final result. After weaving in all the ends, you need to wash your socks and block them. Stitches would be so much better after that. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I will try to reply all the questions as soon as possible. Thank you so much for being with me today. Please let me know if you have any questions on how to knit these socks. All the links to materials and tools that I was using today you can find in the description box below. If you're going to use my tutorial and make these socks and then post it on Instagram, please tag me. I really like to see what you guys do in following my tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. Happy knitting. Bye bye.